Broadcasting from Farm 406 Studios, you are tuned into My Fellow Montanans. My fellow Montanans, I am Dr. Kyle Austin, owner of Farm 406 and candidate for United States Senate. And as always, yes, I approve this message. This primary election is just around the corner, folks. And in fact, you probably have that ballot sitting on your counter, wondering what bubble you're going to fill in, because it's a tough decision out there. And sometimes it's hard to educate yourself. But this primary election, I encourage you to vote outside the box. For Kyle Austin, Montana values for Montana's future. As we know, the two-party system is broken. The Republicans are divided, the Democrats are divided, and they just can't seem to get anything done or unite themselves or America, or even us here in Montana. But the most important issue is you hear about the Montana plan with dark money, but it goes further than that, folks. Are you tired of the parties picking the candidates for you? We have the Republicans standing behind a candidate before the primaries. You have the Libertarians standing behind a candidate, and the Democrats are doing the same thing. Why are the parties picking your candidates and not you? So you have to ask yourself, are you happy with the road we're going down, or do you want change? And if you want change, it is time to be proactive. And like I said, vote outside the box this primary election and change how you vote. We can lump all the issues into one this primary election. It's the economy that's the problem. It's the economy we have to fix. But let's not forget about healthcare along the way, folks. So if you're not registered to vote, register to vote. Vote today and vote Kyle Austin for United States Senate. Well, folks, we have a guest here joining us today on My Fellow Montanans, former veteran, president of the Montana Veterans Association, Samuel Pascal Redfern. Sam, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Kyle. It's great to be with you here from Missoula, Montana. Greetings to all your listeners across the state of Montana, and especially over in Billings and the Highline.
Yeah, so Sam, first time on My Fellow Montanans, and as you know, this is broadcasted worldwide on KGHL and the mighty790.com. And so you're getting worldwide broadcast here that's not just on social media. And so, you know, welcome to My Fellow Montanans. It's really interesting because people will do their podcasts, and this isn't just a podcast. Like I said, it's a radio show, something that I put together because a lot of politicians and candidates out there, they don't reach out weekly to voters. They kind of hide, and the stuff that comes out is canned. And so I created this so we can have open conversations with Montanans to reach out to Montanans, because I'm not afraid of the hot topics. I'm not afraid to have conversations. And so, you know, welcome. And so it's a different kind of show you're on today, and especially Eastern Montana, because a lot of people on the Western side know you because you're out there campaigning for some of the candidates. You're helping veterans. You're doing a huge part of the veterans. What's your role? What have you been doing with the Montana Veterans Association?
Well, so Kyle, it's great that you're highlighting your show and all the listeners that are on here. And so for those that don't know me, Sam Redfern, Montana Veterans Association. You can find me across social media at Montana Veterans Association, or at Samuel Pascal Redfern is my at SamUSOH on X and on Instagram and Facebook. So what we do with Montana Veterans Association, we're well known for our Warrior Team Hunt program. We got the largest hunt program in the state. We train 40 hours of hunter ethics and land navigation, and partner with OnX. And we work with 47 Montana ranches, including several over on the eastern part of the state and up in the Highline. We're pretty widespread across the state. We partner with two organizations. We work with the Veterans Navigation Network there in Billings, Montana. We also work with several other vet orgs across the state. And MVA is a nonpartisan advocacy organization that works on policy for veterans. We have our outdoor hunt program. We have our vet-to-vet buddy checks, which provably save lives. And then we advocate for veterans to register to vote. And then we turn out veterans in an effort called Get Out the Vote. And so just excited to be able to talk issues with you today, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of veterans. I mean, a lot of veterans, they come back to Montana. They like the freedoms in Montana, and that means a lot to them to protect their freedoms and how they vote. What is one of the, I guess, the top issue with your organization and veterans out there in Montana today?
So we survey quarterly, and we do that by phone. We do that by text, and then we have door knockers. Right now, we it's budget based, and so we're only down to about 14 door knockers this year. So we'll be a little light right now, and then we'll pick that up in September. We should be well over 40 door knockers. So we have a muscular organization in the field, and we have 4 different network organizations. So we try to keep things very separate and compliant with our organization. So what we're hearing, and so the point of saying all that, Kyle, is we survey the issues regularly, quarterly. And one of the fascinating things is to see since 2020, where COVID was in the top 5, or perhaps veterans healthcare, and now it's pretty much 3 issues dominating. Like, for example, a year ago, immigration was way up there, and now that's dropped as a concern of Montana veterans. It doesn't mean that when these issues rocket or skyrocket that other issues aren't on their minds. What it means is what's most pressing. And so right now we can really see that the economy and affordability is the number one pressing issue for veterans. And then number 2, which surprises me, we have plenty of data on it, is housing. And so housing has become a crisis issue in the state of Montana. And it doesn't mean just homelessness. It actually means the cost of a mortgage, the VA home loan, renting, all sorts of things packaged into what housing is. I think a lot of folks think of housing as just homelessness, and it's about 8 different issues that are. And immigration used to be a part of that. And when the Fed Reserve and all the regional chairmen said, look, if we had 10 million illegal immigrants coming to this country and we had a surge in immigration, of course there's going to be housing shortages. They had to be placed somewhere. And of course, we saw refugee resettlement funding in Montana skyrocket with the IRC and Soft Landing in Missoula. Their budgets were millions of dollars. They even penetrated into Flathead, and they were really focused on resettling refugee families for a 10-year period here in Montana. And veterans kind of got left behind. We came in a little bit more muscular. We'd like to see the governor do more. We'd like to see a bit more unity in Montana on the housing issue. And then third is healthcare, which is your arena. That never really drops below top 3 in the veteran world. I think that's because the VA is the second largest budget item other than DOD. You know, those are the 2 fattest budgets in the country. I'm a very pro audit the Pentagon, audit the Fed type of guy. We do need to. I'm pro Doge with guardrails. I just want to say that it's, there was the opponents to Doge did have some clever messaging when they talked about taking a chainsaw to jobs. I know that Sam Forsteg has really hit that hard in the Forest Service world, and so we don't want a chainsaw. We want a scalpel. We want to do this right and not damage people. But what we see in healthcare, Kyle, is the VA is improving. That's a good report with the Trump administration, but healthcare costs continue to skyrocket, and it continues to be an issue for veterans, family members, and military family members who don't have TRICARE for life. And so those are the top 3 issues right now in Montana. That'll change. Immigration, like I said, dropped to 5. It was number 2 at one point. And we've had the veterans community, there's about 100,000 veterans in Montana. The VA official number is like 90,000. We scale that up at MVA because we include like the Montana Army National Guard. We include the Special Forces that train here. We include Maelstrom. We include the Native American population that's covered by IHS. So our number is closer to 110,000 Montana veterans. But either way, whether you go with the VA number or somewhere in the middle, it's about 100,000 Montana veterans. And that's a big population. That's one of the largest per capita in the country.
Okay, so let's hit some of those topics there. As people know, I've been a pharmacist for 18 years in Montana. Yeah. I've done government contracting, so I understand the IHS, how that system works. I've done a little work for the veterans as well, so I understand that. Veterans, so people listening, they probably think, well, the veterans get a free ride on healthcare because they have the VA clinics, they get their meds through a mail order system, which sometimes has a small copay of $8 or $9 for 30 days and $24 for 90 days. The individuals that get TRICARE for life get a little more freedom where they can get out to a pharmacy of their choice, a doctor of their choice. What with the veteran health care do the veterans want to change? We talk about affordability, but what is the biggest expense when it comes to a veteran that the government's not covering?
Yeah, so let me tackle that just for the listeners. Obviously, the VA is federal. There's no state money involved, and I haven't heard of any real push for state funding or Medicaid for veterans. I mean, if you served, there's three categories of veterans, and we honor all three as we go into Memorial Day and we think of our fallen brothers and sisters. This is a really a big weekend for that as we honor them. But there's three types of veterans, three categories. There are the general veteran that served in uniform. And if they served over 180 days continuous, they're considered a veteran in uniform. They made it through basic and AIT and served, their regular service. And then there's a veteran that served, their full enlistment cycle, their full obligation. And then there's warfighter veterans, combat veterans that went overseas and fought in a combat zone or fought in combat. And so three different kind of categories of veterans. And the VA is a agency that has a sacred bond with our country that if you sign up and you put your name on the dotted line, you're signed up to die for this country. And as we go into Memorial Day, I remember 86 soldiers died in my units, were killed in Iraq. And we just did 21 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now we've got a new conflict in Iran. And so what we want is, we estimate there's 20 million veterans nationwide in a country of 340 million Americans, and we want to continue to see the VA thrive and do well with our veterans. Their budget does increase. We want to see fraud tackled. Veterans fraud is rare, but it happens. So it's about 3% of the claims out there are fraudulent, and the veterans community really wants to see that cleaned up. If we're willing to do that in our community and clean house, I would ask the American citizens to ask for that with Medicaid and Medicare and all these fraudulent caregiving companies that are named in California and Minnesota. We have to clean up the fraud. That will save our government money. That will redeem money to the taxpayer. And then we do want the access to care and our veterans to be taken care of. We don't want to see our veterans be destroyed health-wise. We don't want to see them die in our communities without care. The biggest issue we're pressing for right now, Kyle, to answer your original question, is access to care. And I really push back against that. That's total privatization. What it is the VA is still the bond giver, right? They're the ones that have the obligation to the veteran and the one the veteran makes the claim with. But the veteran then has the choice to go out in the community and go to your pharmacy, Austin, or to a doctor locally for a podiatry exam to be able to walk. I had a veteran that's paralyzed and he just had a surgery where he can walk a little bit now. And he got that through community care. And so what we're pushing for is probably three-prong, Kyle, is number one, let's get rid of the fraud. Let's clean house in the VA. We're on board. We're not going to hide anything. As veterans, we want accountability. That does apply to the military too, and DOD. So veterans are going to be investigated, and veterans are going to call out our house. DOD, Pentagon, how about you? How about you clean up some books? How about you account to the American people on the fraud, waste, and abuse? But we agree. Let's do that. And again, it's small in the veterans community. It is only about 3 or 4%, but it exists, and it's enough money where we could redeem the taxpayer. Number two, let's get access to care in the community, and let's get our veterans with local doctors, pharmacists like you, Kyle, and let them have the freedom they fought for to choose their health care. And then number three is let's continue to strengthen the caregiver program. And that's where a family member, Kyle, or a community nurse can be hired to take care of our wheelchair vets, our vets that are paralyzed, our vets that are heavily disabled. And that program has paid family members so they don't have the burden of that care. It actually saves the taxpayers a lot of money. In the end, the ROI is great on that. It keeps the veteran alive and it keeps the family intact. So that's the three policy goals we have is let's get rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse at DOD and Pentagon and at VA. Let's save billions of dollars for the taxpayers. Let's strengthen caregivers. which is our family members and our nurses who are heroic, and our pharmacists, everyone that's taking care of that vet. And then let's make sure that we have access to care.
Sam, I feel like you read my Healthcare 2.0 plan.
Did I? Okay.
I think you did, because Healthcare 2.0 is one of my platform items, and if anybody understands how to fix healthcare, it's me, because I run into veterans. They're locked into the VA program, but if they need help now, they can't go to Farm 406 and get a prescription without paying for out of pocket. And so part of Healthcare 2.0 is consolidating a lot of the government expenses on healthcare with the VA, TRICARE, Medicaid, Medicare programs, putting it under one umbrella, and then giving veterans their own insurance cards so they can choose their provider, they can choose their pharmacy, and they can get access same day without having to go through a pile of paperwork and approvals to get out to get a surgery done. If we can consolidate a lot of that wasteful spending that's out there in the healthcare programs, money will go much further, and veterans can get more access and a more affordability for their healthcare. I talk about it with Medicaid all the time and Medicare. Well, Medicare is a 60-year-old program. And there's so many middlemen out there that's making so much billions of dollars off the taxpayer, and the patient never sees it. They never see it because it doesn't get there. And the same thing goes with the veterans program. The money doesn't get there. It's wasted in between with all these programs. And then we talk about access in Montana for veterans. I always say veterans in Sidney, Montana have to drive all the way to Fort Harrison and Helena to see a hospital. That's not right. I mean, you got a day of driving, then you got to see your doctor, and then you got to stay in a hotel again and drive all the way back to Sidney. No, give them a card and they can walk right into Sidney Medical Center and see a doctor in the same day. And so that's been part of my Healthcare 2.0 plan when I'm elected as United States Senator. And it's just going to take time, when I get elected, to go into Congress and just explain what's going on. And why we need to create this consolidation program to allow our money to go further and make it more efficient and eliminate the fraud, waste, and abuse, as we saw in Minnesota. And I've told many people, Washington, D.C. is targeting Minnesota right now, but if they walked into Montana, they will see the same thing with our state of Montana Medicaid. And we have a lot of Medicaid recipients out there right now that's upset about the big, beautiful bill on how it cut federal funding to the state Medicaid program. But folks, he did it for a reason. He did it because of the fraud, waste, and abuse. Now the state government is going to dive into the program and put an end to that fraud, waste, and abuse, because in Montana, we're $35 million in deficit with Medicaid now without federal funding. So Governor Gianforte has a task, but if he eliminates the fraud, waste, and abuse, and I can name one of them, but I won't right now, it will save. I mean, the state Medicaid program will be more efficient. The other thing you brought up was cost of living. What is the number one? Because everyone's out there saying, "Oh, the cost of living is really high with housing." What is the number one thing that veterans are saying that has gone up in the cost of housing? Is it taxes? Is it rent? Is it utilities? What's the number one problem there you're seeing?
Well, first, let me just say this, Kyle. Your voice is very important on healthcare. I would hope that the Montana people would listen to your voice, and that a lot of your peers running for office would give you more time and give you a platform, because you already have a good platform. But I'm just saying your voice is very important. If you're aligned with Montana veterans and you're a healthcare expert, your pharmacy background, we need voices like that in leadership. But to your point on housing, there's three areas we're hearing a lot. We're still trying to figure out the policy solution. So a lot of times you have two ears and one mouth for a reason in the vet world. You want to listen, you want to have boots in the ground, but we're pretty confident in what we're seeing and hearing. So, and that is number one, the property tax issue. So you don't have to be a free market expert or an economist to understand that when somebody's property taxes go up, they pass that on. It's like when your gas tax goes up, your price at the pump goes up, right? You pay more for your fuel. It's the same thing when Joe Jones down the road, his taxes go up, and he's still got to, with inflation, make money. So he passes a $250 or $500 rent increase onto his renters. And so the property taxes is probably the number one issue we're hearing. Number two is you do have some real bad bureaucracy. This is where your voice could be very strong. And I give credit to Governor Giaforte and Kristen Juris for trying, and so far with the Trump administration, probably a C on this issue. We need to see more effort. We don't just need to hear the rhetoric. We need to see action, and that is a lot of bureaucracies in the way. For example, HUD-VASH vouchers. HUD-VASH vouchers are primarily for veterans in the state of Montana, and most of them are not used. It's very wasteful to not use them for veterans that are unhoused or in transition because they're already appropriated. So it's just a waste. But the blockage is this, and I'm trying to simplify it. HUD-VASH has so many rules. For example, Kyle, if you have two kiddos and you have an ex, you got divorced in the Army, and you haven't won that custody, you've got shared custody, or maybe they've got weekends with you as the dad, you cannot use a HUD-VASH voucher and house those kids with you. It's limited to one room. It's the one room policy unless you have full custody. So what it does is it drives a lot of veterans to get in prolonged custody battles, and then veterans to not even have an extra room for their children when they visit. It's a stupid bureaucratic policy that makes no sense. It could be cleaned up. We often say in the veteran community that yellow ribbons turn into red tape, and bureaucracy is killing our veterans. It's hurting the people of Montana. And again, I give our governor and lieutenant governor credit because they are trying to tackle that. So HUD-VASH has really been a failure in Montana, and that is something the Trump administration could fix. The second part is the landlords. If you have a California couple coming into Missoula, Montana, and they've got one kiddo and they're making, they got a tech company that just hired them, and you're renting your townhouse and they'll pay $2,500, and you've got a veteran that's not able to have his kiddos over, and he's desperate, and he can give you a $1,500 HUD-VASH voucher, who are you going to choose as a landlord? I mean, you're going to rent to that couple, and you're going to get $1,000. Yeah, you're going to get $1,000 more. The HUD-VASH voucher caps out. So, and the veterans that are disabled are the most vulnerable. They really have to have strong family networks, and unfortunately, some of them, due to their sacrifices in war, their families are challenged. And so a lot of it is bureaucratic. So we go to the property taxes, Kyle, which I know you understand. It's a contentious issue in Montana. And then we get to the red tape and bureaucratic. And then the third is jobs. The timber industry, the mining industry. I can name 30 different industries in Montana that are strangled by litigation and by bad judges. And I get it. We make choices as a state on, the data centers right now are very controversial. And some veterans have come to me and said, well, they hire me, there's hope there. Right. And so jobs, it's just keep it simple. As jobs, you need to have, besides VA disability, you need to have income as veterans. And I encourage all my veterans, I get it. Again, bureaucracy strangles the vet. If you're 100% permanent total, you're not allowed to work. I think that's a terrible policy. It's the same with Social Security. If you're 100% there, you either choose, it's like slavery. You either choose the disability or the SSD, or you go out there and you try to work, and if you work, they'll take it away. And so we have a lot of veterans, not the majority, but a certain amount that are trapped with tough decisions. And so we need voices like yours. We need people that can see through the bureaucracy and see through the red tape, and that are strong on fraud. We don't want fraud. We don't want people milking the system. We don't want bad actors taking advantage, but also want to get the money moving again, and not paralyzed. And so those are some of the challenges on the housing. And then lastly, outside of those three, I would say supply and demand. I have so many visionary developers, young Liberty guys that want to build developments that have some capital, but they don't know if they should do TIF in Missoula, tax increment financing. They're worried about the zoning. I mean, there's so many areas of strength in these developers that want to build like micro homes for vets, or want to build these 3-bed, 2-bath townhouses. and build 50 units and get a bunch of vets in there. Again, we have 100,000 vets in Montana. We've got at least 2,000 that aren't housed, and I probably more that are vulnerable. They say up to 5,000, and they being the organizations that work on these issues, it could be up to 5,000 veterans in Montana that are very vulnerable. So you're talking about 5% of the population that we could really just solve like that. We get rid of the bureaucracy, we get the money moving, and we get those vets taken care of. I mean, it's a lack of leadership, Kyle. It's a lack of leadership. Now that doesn't solve the general Los Angeles and Zootown problems of homes being multi-million-dollar homes now. I get that that's supply and demand, and that's people moving in and corporate buyers. Those are bigger policy battles that you can tackle. I'm just giving you the foxhole view of what's blocking the vets.
For the veterans, absolutely. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to one of my number one platforms, smaller government, because what we've seen is the government has gotten so big that we can't get anything done. Veterans can't get anything done. And so it's really putting us in a corner. But my fellow Montanans, we have to take a quick break. You are here with Kyle Austin, candidate for United States Senate, and our guest, Samuel Pascal Redfern with the Montana Veterans Association. And we'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to my fellow Montanans. I am Dr. Kyle Austin, owner of Farm 406 and candidate for United States Senate. And we've been listening here with our guest, Samuel Pascal Redfern, the president of Montana Veterans Association and a veteran himself. So Samuel, welcome back. And before the break, we were talking about housing and some of the problems affecting veterans in the state. And I let you have the floor there, but I'd like to respond to some of those issues. And so a lot of people out there, they talk about taxes being a huge thing with, and how do we solve taxes? But I want people to remember that your property taxes, it's a local matter. It's a city and county issue. And so if you really want to lower your property taxes, go to your city council, go to your county commissioners and say, guys, you need to cut your budget. You need to cut your spending so we can lower our property taxes. And one of the big interesting things out there I've seen this year is the school mill levies. That impacts your property taxes. And so like Billings shot down the mill levy for the schools, but you saw communities like Butte vote for it. And those are things, yes, we feel sorry for kids and we want to have good education out there. But when you keep voting for those things, that raises your property taxes. And so really pay attention to your property tax form and where that money goes, and communicate to your local, like I said, government. Because the state has nothing to do with property taxes. Okay, so taxes, number one, they're solved. I would love to solve property taxes on a federal level, but that is out of my control. The other thing you could do is reach out to your state representatives and have them cap city taxes. That is something that they have the power to do. And so you can reach out to your state representatives and also say, hey, we want a cap. We do not want Billings, Montana to go on their crazy spending sprees that they have done, and they're destroying our housing markets and our business markets. I mean, businesses right now are closing their doors because taxes are too high. So let's go back to the other things with, veterans. You mentioned, what was that voucher that you mentioned, Sam?
Yeah, that's HUD-VASH. The Housing Urban Development is a federal agency, and it's tasked with housing issues, and the VASH stands for Veterans Assistant for housing. And so HUD-VASH is a voucher that's given out to every state that's been around for a very long time. And in Montana, it's mostly unused. In Missoula returned most of them.
And you said it's the veterans know about this. And you said the veterans know about this program, but they just can't access it because of barriers.
Well, I think not enough veterans know about it. Unfortunately, I think some do. I think that the barriers are, you got to have landlords willing to take it. And I gave that example of the California couple moving in with ability to pay way more than a HUD-VASH voucher. And so I think you gotta have the HUD-VASH voucher be relevant when you're in a skyrocketing housing market like Missoula or Los Angeles or Whitefish. Those vouchers aren't going to go very far. Maybe a studio, if that. And so I that's where I got into veterans are going to have to find ways to make extra money besides their disability or their pensions to be able to live in these areas. Otherwise, they're going to be forced into rural or leaving. I hate to say it. I know dozens of veterans that have left the state of Montana, and we don't want to lose them. They were born and raised here. They were part of our fabric. They went and served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they just can't afford to feed their family here. And so, the other issue is Main Street has been decimated in America, as you pointed out. And a lot of that is federal policy. And we can get into the Federal Reserve interest rates and all that. But a lot of it does have to do with the absolute systematic destruction of Main Street. And then you have all the nonprofit industry begging the Main Street businesses to support them and cut checks to them. And some of these businesses are barely able to survive and stay afloat with skyrocketing inflation. And so, it's just it's a perfect storm in the economy. Inflation drives a lot of it. I believe that inflation is caused by supply shocks, but I also believe it's over printing of money, and the Fed has injected a lot of money into our economy. And so you're not going to see any interest rate reductions anytime soon. Anybody smart knows that. People want it. Trump rails against the Fed, but when you're dealing with an inflated environment, you're not going to get reduced interest rates. And so I'm looking at, you need to be able to save right now money. You need to maximize your networks as a veteran. You need to be really building networks. It's why it's great to have a new relationship with you, Kyle, and learn what you're all about and what you stand for, which I'm really aligned with a lot of what I've heard so far. And it's so important that veterans have their house in order. Because some of these economic shocks that happened really forced a lot of veterans out of Montana. This has become a very expensive place to live in pockets.
Yeah. And I blame Gianforte for that, because I believe he created Los Angeles and invited all these rich people to Montana and created, this mess. But it could have been resolved as COVID also, because when COVID happened, all these people moved. And then also immigration is to blame, because immigration came into these larger communities and pushed a lot of people out, and they didn't want to deal with the immigrants. So they moved to Montana. And I've heard it all.
I'm glad you hit that issue. I'll tell you the one issue the mayor of Missoula, Andrea Davis, blew up about with me was she had let the cat out of the bag that there were 5,000 refugees in Missoula, and it got printed by several publications. At a private meeting, there were multiple witnesses there that had been resettled by IRC and soft landing. Now, I will concede some of those refugees left the state. Some of them went to different parts of the state. But 5,000 over the last 10 years is going to cause a housing shortage.
Yes, we got to find a place for those.
Where do you put them?
Well, and then it drives the cost up.
She blew up at me, and it became a whole distraction of the number, right? The number got debated and what she said and what she was willing to admit. The point being that I told her, like the communications director, Jenny, I mean, you can ask anybody in Missoula in the pachyderm or the Patriot world or the vet. I mean, it's turned into a big blow up because the cat was out of the bag. She had admitted there was so many refugees that came into Missoula. Now, what the city of Missoula's answer was for the corporate side was tax increment financing. And that's basically redistributing your property taxes to a specific area of the city to develop, to entice development and developers. And then was the building of subsidized apartments. And that's a master plan. Section 8 is a business plan in Bozeman. Mm-hmm. I blew the whistle on that in Bozeman, and that was another blow up. So, yeah, this is good for developers and government because it keeps the property taxes going up. It keeps the developer money moving, and they infuse new bloods. It's bad for veterans. It's bad for average citizens and small business in Montana. So they're picking winners and losers.
Well, here's the thought, because I see veteran-owned businesses out there, and I support veteran-owned businesses, and there's a cool one that's actually being built up in Culbertson, Montana right now that I help advocate for the future of the farmers and ranchers out there is a fertilizer production facility. And I've been campaigning on that. Well, a veteran-owned business now is breaking ground on a fertilizer production facility. And I know veterans have access to special funding when they want to open a veteran-owned business. So just a thought out there, is there some veterans maybe considering applying for that funding and opening up a veteran community apartment complex or a housing complex and actually have their own small business where they only maybe rent or lease to veterans?
Yeah, I think it's close. I think it's close. I think that a lot of folks are waiting on the Trump administration. It's like that HUD Vash problem. Until we get some leadership there, nobody really wants to. I mean, there's a few. There's a few. You don't want to speak for all vets, right? But I'm saying the majority. There's a few veterans that will do the SBA loans. They'll do the SCORE loans. They'll take access to capital from the government. I am kind of more of a bootstrap guy. I think you look at the governor, you look at a lot of the successful, Mark Springer, great Liberty guy out of Bozeman. I grew up with Mark. He bootstrapped Dayspring and they built it into a huge empire, DKI International. It was starting as a restoration company and carpet cleaning, and it turned into just everything you can imagine. These guys never owed debt to anybody, and they were able to accelerate their cash flow. I mean, we're in a society that you need to own assets. You have to be an asset owner if you're going to build wealth. And what you're touching on, Kyle, is really important. We do want veterans or liberty-minded folks creating our developments, creating businesses, creating jobs, because they will hire good veterans. They will hire good, hard-working Montanans. Look at the Haddam, where MKC, they've provided 120 good-paying jobs making knives. In Missoula, just went to their huge opening here in Missoula. It's a pride and joy of Missoula and Montana is the Montana Knife Company. And Don Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and so many great leaders in America use the Montana knives on their tactical journeys and their hunting trips. And so, and some of those jobs, like Josh Smith, he's a friend of mine. He owns and started Montana Knife Company. They got a high school kid that started with them and then grew in the ranks and then developed. Now he's got a 6-figure job there. And so we do need that. I'm not against, veterans going out and getting those loans, and there are veterans willing to do that. But I do think it's best to cash flow it, build it up, private invest, build up your capital so that you're not leveraged. I'm a guy that loves our country and wants to keep our government in check. Let's put it that way. And so, but the point you're making is great, is we do need veterans to create companies, do these developments, and hire and house their fellow veterans. And that does work best. There's a great community in Sula, Montana that is housing veterans down there. There are hubs in Montana of veterans hiring veterans. So that could be a great answer towards the future. And we need to make sure as policymakers that we get, and as we talk to investors and donors and attract folks to Montana, that they put the veterans first, that they prioritize that. I've got a big donor family that loves veterans. And if they could just see some leadership in some companies, we've thrown a few business plans their way. They've given like 50 grand or 100 grand to, but if they could just see some leadership and some great business plans, they're willing to dump millions into Montana. They already have. They've dumped over $20 million into veterans in this state. So they're out there. People are looking for leaders that have the vision and have a business that want to hire vets.
Perfect. So Sam, we got about 10 minutes left on the show. Is there a topic you want to talk about? I know we've talked about ATF raids in Montana. We can save that for another day, or we can talk about voters getting out and voting and what they're looking for, or I can take hot topic questions from you and you can interview me. That's up to you. Is there something on your mind?
Let's hit some national topics. We hit Montana so heavily, and then we'll close with me asking you a few questions. That sounds great. I basically want to just say this about the ATF raid that I went through with a colonel. It was highly illegal, highly unconstitutional. I have nothing to hide on that. It's happened frequently across Montana. What I'm concerned with is lawfare and intimidation is become a huge issue in politics. Now, if you haven't been lawfared or raided, then you're probably not a threat. I mean, our president was raided. Our James O'Keefe has been raided multiple times. Roger Stone. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, who resigned today, God bless her husband as he battles cancer, was allegedly raided. She didn't like that term, so we'll say the CIA came to their office at DNI and took boxes and hard drives. Whatever your worldview is, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Republican, we are starting to enter a new chapter in Montana as well, but in America, of lawfare and raids. And it's one of the greatest libertarians, McAfee, who's dead now. One of the greatest freedom fighters, Charlie Kirk, is dead now. There's a lot of freedom fighters out there that are dead or raided or silenced. And so that's become a major concern in the veterans community as well.
We've seen that a lot, and that's why Trump has came out with the Department of Justice fund for people that have been a victim of that.
Yes.
And now we got the Republicans that are fighting Trump on that, which I disagree. I do believe there should be some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a funding, though, for the victims of government mishap.
Okay.
And in Montana, I support small business owners because we see it a lot from the Department of Labor and Industry, where the Department of Labor and Industry walks all over businesses and they come in and invade or raid small businesses, and they act like the IRS, and they literally take your freedoms away. But when I was reading the story in the paper about your raid in Missoula, where the ATF violated the rights of these veterans, and you look at who was responsible for that. And when I looked at it and you follow the chain of command, it goes to the United States District Attorney's Office, which is interesting enough. It's an opponent of mine, Kurt Alme. Kurt Alme appears to be the guy that's behind these ATF raids or the IRS raids of business owners with guns. And it goes back to the red flag laws. These red flag laws that they're using to violate rights. And then at the end of the day, no one's convicted, no one's charged. They're just raiding. And we saw it with that gun shop in Great Falls, Montana, even where
that was
the
ATF raid. Yep.
And that was also another Alme raid. And so the voters out there, is the message that I'm trying to send right now is, and that's why I'm on the Libertarian ballot, because if I was on the Republican ballot, I can't beat the corruption behind Kurt Alme and his goons. So I switched to the Libertarian ballot to get around that. But the voters out there that are saying, oh, I'm always Republican, and don't vote for Alme. And we're kind of seeing that coming out because a lot of voters, you see these Republican committees and they're not putting Alme on the list of a recommended candidate. And so I'm hoping people throw that Republican ballot to the side and actually shift over to the Libertarian ballot to vote for Kyle Lawson for United States Senate. And so that's kind of where
I've
I
got
stand.
a follow-up question on that for you. I'll get to that, but I'll just say I'm really happy to hear you say that you support a fund, because I'll tell you and this is for your listeners. If you served in Iraq or Afghanistan and we killed a member of your family, or we killed one of your sheep or a herd of animals, we had to compensate you. That was basic 101 Army Marine Corps doctrine in Iraq, is we would compensate when we made a mistake. And so I dealt with all the time. We were compensating, farmers, ranchers. There was a firefight and they brought in a claim to FOB Freedom, our palace in Mosul, and we'd process the claims. It's a basic part of government in protecting the people, that when they're wronged or they're lawfared or some of these people were put into solitary confinement, their lives were destroyed. Their families were destroyed. I had a 7-year-old girl at CPAC. This is in 2023, CPAC in Texas. And she asked me if she'd ever see her dad again. And I won't name the family, but it really touched my heart because, this was a veteran who had been raided in the middle of the night, and his wife was held at gunpoint on the ground, pretty bruised up. She showed me the pictures. And he's one of these guys that would be eligible for compensation for his little girl to have a bright future. So I don't agree with everything every person involved in J6 did. Of course, I was there. Of course, I was raided by the FBI. I've been raided 3 times, Kyle. So I've never been arrested or charged. So that should tell your listeners something, that they definitely want information, and you definitely should try to comply, but invoke your rights. So I've never fought or, been a Samson with a jawbone in those kind of situations. But what I'm trying to say is I really appreciate that you understand the idea of recompense justice that Trump is obviously going to push, and he's going to battle over whether the Senate Republicans allow it or not, is going to be interesting because there's going to be Trump is going to want that fund.
Right.
Second part of that is, I would say Mr. Almy is deeply concerning to the vet community, and that might be why his campaign hasn't taken off. And in no way, shape, or form am I going to personalize this, but I want to be fact based, and then we'll get to my question for you. Is Mr. Almy has ordered multiple raids across Montana. I think you referenced my raid with Colonel Gardapi in Missoula that was widely reported, over 700,000 views in the Billings Gazette, Bozeman Chronicle, Missoulian Lee. It was covered widely. It was covered on social media. We don't need to go there. I've already stated it was illegal, unconstitutional, which, by the way, Almy never gave us a probable cause warrant or probable cause affidavit. I mean, they played games. They would send our certified mail from MVA. They took MVA property. There's $1,300 missing. And we're not out trying to accuse any agent or trying to, do that kind of deal. We just want to get this done and wrapped up and move on with our lives. And they're playing games.
Well, it's going to be hard to move on because they invaded your lives. They ruined your liberties, your freedoms, and they embarrassed you. And that's the thing. And that's why Trump wants this fund, because when the government feels they have the right to do this and then they find out they're wrong, you should be compensated for it. And that's really what that fund's about.
I hope, Kyle, that you surround yourself with good attorneys and good people, and I hope every candidate does, because the people around Kurt Almy will lawfare. They'll come after you. And they, like the other example was the Great Falls Business, who was one of the largest donors to Matt Rosendale, a good friend of Matt Rosendale. They took that business out. Now, whether you like Matt over on the eastern side or not, when his donors were being taken out and lawfared and raided by Kurt Almy, and then there was a rumor made up about him impregnating a staffer, a 17-year-old girl, which was false. And then you see Daines install Almy with 8 minutes left on the clock by the filing deadline, and then patriotic veteran voices are being lawfared and raided. I want your audience, I trust that your audience is smart, and Montanans are pretty smart, that they can start to connect some dots.
And they will.
I do not support Mr. Almy. I know that he is ruthless. I know that when I speak out, he will seek to indict me, to even plant something falsely. I've got recordings of his people stating that they're looking for something. And so I would take Mr. Almy very serious, and the people that backed him. There's a reason they want to install him. And you have to ask yourself, Montana, when we brought in Greg Giaforte and Troy Downing and Tim Sheehy and so many great patriots and even some great libertarians around, and we had a freedom caucus in the state legislature, and we've had some fantastic Democrats stand up, like Alani Bankhead. I don't agree with her on so many issues, but she is fighting for children that have been trafficked in Montana and abused. And they're so many of them are businessmen or businesswomen. Do you want to go back to the days where our state was run by attorneys? That is what they're trying to do right now with Mr. Almy, Mr. Knudsen, and many others that want to run this state and control the money in this state. And so, no, I don't want to make it personal, but I would ask Montanans to really look at who has your back, who has your interest, who aligns with you on policy, and ask yourself why Mr. Almy was installed and appointed to run for U.S. Senate, and then make a wise decision, Montana. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely. So we got about 1 minute left. Sam, you got a question for me? Because I don't mind the hot topic question.
Yeah. So two questions for you. If you can give me 2 minutes. 2 minutes is number one is give an overall view of your governance philosophy. If you were to ask Montana veterans to trust you and get your vote, what is your overall philosophy? What would you bring to the Senate? And then the second question is a loaded one. I hope you're okay with it. It's where would you align with President Trump, and where would you maybe challenge his administration?
Well, the first question is I, born and raised in Montana, 4th generation business owner. Everything I have, I've fought for. Okay, just like a veteran does. I'm an advocate for small government and getting government out of the way so we have the freedoms to do business, we have the freedoms to live life, and we have the freedoms to competition. And so by installing that and getting the government out of the way, not only will veterans thrive, Native Americans will thrive, and Montanans will thrive. The other question is with Trump, I align with like President Trump, I align with him probably 90% of the time. Okay.
That's about where
There's
I'm at. I'd say 93 is where I'm at if I were to score myself.
okay.
But,
So about 93. But when people elect a president of the United States, instead of fighting them on everything, you have to be agreeable. We elected him to be a leader. And when we fight our president of the United States, we never get anything done. So there's nothing wrong with being agreeable, but instead of, be agreeable with President Trump, but say, hey, President Trump, I agree with you going to war with Iran to defend the freedoms of the United States, but we can do it better. And this is how Austin for United States would have done it better. And that's how I would approach it as a United States Senator, because you can be agreeable, but come up with a better game plan and help him out as a team member. And so that's what I would do with President Donald Trump.
I appreciate you answering that, because I liked, and I'm not comparing you to Massey. So for audience members, please don't misunderstand me. In fact, Kyle told me privately he had some concerns with Mr. Massey. So I think that is what cost Massey. I liked Massey. I obviously donated to him because, just to be clear, I was a 3-time Trump voter. I strongly support the president, 93% aligned. But I do think we need some constitutional conservatives and liberty-minded leaders in Congress. I think the Congress approval rating, Kyle, is like 10%. And the big joke in the vet community is, who's the 10%? Like,
there's a lot of people that supported Almy, but when you're one person, you can't get anything done. And he was just too far to the left, I guess you could say. And so that's why they called him out. But he should have been a little more agreeable, but came up with a better game plan. Said, all right, I agree with you, but let's do it better. So final thoughts, Sam, where can people go to donate to Montana Veterans Association if they want to donate to you?
Absolutely. So mtmvafoundation.org/coalition, or contact me. We are, just to be clear, our foundation is seeking C3, so it's not tax deductible currently, but we are approved with the IRS with our C4. C3 is in process, and then we have obviously our 2 other networks. If you want to support MVA, we have a membership model. We'd love to have you. Main thing is we scholarship veterans all the time. So if you're a veteran and you want to sign up, we'll scholarship you. It's not about the money. We want you to be a part of a team. Right now, we do have over 8,000 members. We're probably the fastest and largest veteran org in the state. We're fairly new. We've only been around for about a little over 4.5 years. So I want to be clear with folks about that. But we got a great track record. We've won on 13 bills in the legislature. We have a great reputation across state. We have some enemies too. There are some folks out there that don't want to see veterans united, and they don't want to see us come together. They would rather we're tribal and divided and pacified. And I understand that's a longer conversation. The other thing I'd say, Kyle, is we should talk if we do this again. Best wishes to you in your election. But if we talk again soon, we should do a segment on the Iran war and covering Iraq, Afghanistan. I think your audience would love that. And I could even bring in a couple other vets on that who multiple, 5, 6 deployments. And that's been a hot debate in Montana, is the Iran war. What we're hearing is the airstrikes are supported. So I want to be clear with your audience on that. There's definitely a consensus that the Iranian regime was evil. The Ayatollah needed to go. They had attacked us for 47 years. There's a lot of history there. But I think the red line for most Montana veterans right now is ground troops. And so we can cover that another day. I just want to say, Austin, people can find us on the web. You can look up Montana Veterans Association on Facebook, or at SamUSOH or Samuel Pascal Redfern on all my socials. I really appreciate the time. I want to thank you for putting yourself out there and running for public office and being a voice. And thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Well, my fellow Montanans, we are out of time. Thank you for joining my fellow Montanans. We will see you next Sunday at 7 p.m., same place, same time. And remember, get out and vote for Kyle Austin for United States Senate, who is Montana Values for Montana's Future.